We are so delighted that everyone could come together today and become demystified about PURA, what it is, and how Chairman Gillette is reshaping the way that the authority performs for a better and cleaner energy future. Sincere thanks to everyone for your collective wisdom. To those who must leave us now, have a great weekend. For those of you who can stay on for a few minutes for a little debriefing, please do. I think, Mark, you can invite everyone to unmute themselves when they want to speak, correct?
Yes, and I think folks can unmute themselves at any time.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Let's continue the conversation with, you know, some apple cider, and we thank you again so much.
Thank you for having us. Look forward to engaging with you in the future.
Yes, thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll welcome, and we have saved the chat, so when we post the slides, the chat will be there as well. And apologies to all the questions that I couldn't get out in the time that we had.
I was really interested to, and I need to review it better. I was interested to learn how PURA regulates certain aspects of our water supply. So I want to know more about that. I think Chairman Gillette had indicated that the two major water companies do have certain responsibilities to PURA, but others do not.
Patrice, I'll throw my ignorance in. I believe, my understanding is that when something is a natural monopoly, which is to say there's one set of wires, it wouldn't be economical for society to have two sets of wires, or when it's one water pipe, it makes sense to have two sets of pipes. The quid pro quo is that they get that natural monopoly in exchange for being regulated by this public utility regulatory authority.
I see.
However, there are entities like Metropolitan District Commission, which is I'm part of, which is not, as I understand it, part of PURA. I don't know exactly why, because it is one set of pipes. It might be that that commission itself is sort of a mini PURA when it comes to that, but I think that that's the overriding thing. A natural monopoly is within PURA's control, unless there's some other.
Thank you. Because it's interesting, you know, that, for example, in Wilton, you know, since Eversource bought Aquarian, you know, there's some concern about that. And so, I don't know, it's just a complicated issue.
I might interject. Chair Gillette alluded to the fact that the expert on water policy within PURA is her colleague, Commissioner Witkowski. I wouldn't think it, I think it would be a good idea perhaps if you wanted to put together another such conference on water policy. How's the water plan going? How's it working with the WUCs? What are we doing about conservation in times of drought? Jack, I'm sure, would be very glad to participate in something like that. And given where we are today, it's as high a priority as anything we're doing on the energy side. This has been such a successful format. Maybe it's something you want to put together sooner than later.
Thank you. Sounds like a great idea.
Water, yeah. I would throw out to the group, and sort of an extension of what you said, Representative Steinberg. I learned an awful lot about PURA. I know something about DEEP, but as I realized how much I didn't know about PURA, I wonder if it would make sense, at least maybe for the Bureau of Energy and Technology Policy within Deep, that we would have another session involving them as well. And certainly Katie Dykes is a renowned figure in her own right. So
Katie's one of the brightest people we have in the state of Connecticut. She drives me crazy sometimes with her elliptical answers, but she gave perhaps the best explanation of energy utility bill fees, rates, legacy costs, and the like. For the first time, I actually understood it. And that's because she gave such a straightforward explanation. I think just starting with that would be very valuable for folks. And I think Katie has a particularly important role here in the state of Connecticut, having served as Deputy Commissioner of DEEP, then moved on to Chair of PURA, then back to Commissioner of DEEP. Nobody has a holistic understanding of what's going on in Connecticut as well as she does. Her direct role in Reggie and a lot of the talks on a regional basis. You know, she may talk over some of our heads sometimes. I have to admit sometimes, you know, she's too fast for me. But if we can encourage her to bring it down to well, as I say in the legislature, third grade reading level, perhaps it'll be beneficial.
We're incredibly lucky to have Katie Dykes, and we're incredibly lucky to have Marissa Gillette. And it's very clear that she's got this vast remit, and she works extremely hard. And it's also clear that she is inviting us to play a bigger role, which doesn't happen all the time. So I think, you know, we owe it to her to up our game, to really get into the weeds. And you know, I think we have to work together to do that, but pool our resources and be more engaged on some of these issues that she doesn't want to be the prosecutor and the judge on.
We scored a major coup in getting her here. I don't think anybody would have realized how valuable she's going to be as part of this conversation. And I should add that from time to time, because of her candor, because of her willingness to take on the entire gamut of issues across the state, she's been embattled. She took a lot of heat coming off the storm response. I know that she didn't necessarily take it personally, but you know, she needs to hear from all of us that we're supporting her, that we appreciate that what she's doing. Yeah, she's a big girl in a tough circumstance. She knows what she got herself into. But I think it is in all of our interests to go out of our way to show support, to encourage her to be as ambitious and aspirational as she is across the docket, because there are a lot of forces out there contending to see that PURA is not effective, that PURA is not so much defunded as diminished. And frankly, she lacks a lot of the horses on the street, a lot of the resources to do the things she'd like to do. If we're going to be effective in changing policy in this state, we have to really empower PURA.
You know, I just thought she was so amazing. And what I was really took me away was that, you know, when it comes to the regulatory process, I think, you know, in the past, people have been maybe intimidated to be a part of that, to participate. Maybe, you know, like people have mentioned before, they felt that their voice wasn't going to be heard, or it just didn't matter. But she was so genuinely, you know, invitational to all of us to participate in whatever way we could. And, you know, I, for one, now really do want to get more involved with that, because I feel like the comments that, you know, our organization makes will actually be heard and could actually make a difference. And I just was so taken away with her generosity in reaching out to all of us like that, and really inviting us to participate, and that like everyone is saying, that she really wants to hear it. And I just think that's a little bit different than PURA has been in the past. Not that PURA was not good in the past, I'm just saying, you know, she just really brings such an amazing generosity and perspective and openness and welcoming to the department. And I think it's at a time, it's so needed, and she demonstrates such profound leadership. And I think we're also lucky to have her in that role.
Go ahead, Paula. You're on mute though. I think you're still on mute, Paula. Paula Panzarella, I think you're still on mute. It's in the lower left of the Zoom screen. You have to turn on your mic.
She's having microphone problems.
No.
While she's figuring out her microphone, I'm just also in awe of Jonathan. You were amazing. And the questions that you asked were extraordinary. And that was such a dynamic conversation. So thank you so much for.
Well, thank you for that. Without violating any confidences, Chair Gillette and I talk on occasion, and we really enjoy each other's company. We get into a lot of the really gnarly, pretty stuff when it comes to the grid. So.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I want to take advantage of this chance to talk with so many of you throughout the state and ask a question. About 5-6 years ago, the legislature did approve pilot programs for shared solar. And I'm wondering if any of them did come to fruition and if there's been an assessment on that. I mean, at the time, I was quite upset that it was a pilot program, because shared solar has worked out so well in a number of places throughout the country. So do any of you have any idea how the shared solar programs worked out, or even where they're located? Because it's not in the news.
Well, I'll just say that when the legislature can't come to consensus on how to move forward in a bold manner, we do a pilot program. Usually the first thing we do is we do a study, which is totally meaningless. But after that, we do a pilot program because we're not prepared to really commit to something. I think that was very much the case in shared solar. And I would have to suggest to you, the way we structured that pilot, it was almost preordained that we would have at best mixed results. To my mind, we should be going full speed ahead. I know the Office of Consumer Counsel expressed concerns at the time about protecting consumers who subscribe to shared solar. I thought that was a valid point, but it was a little overblown, and that other states have done a very effective job of protecting consumers in that context. I think that frustrated our ability to move forward in some ways. I will say that it is not a significant focus right now of DEEP or the chairs of the Energy and Technology Committee. If I were in charge, I say that a lot, it would be one of my priorities, because it's one of the ways that we're going to accomplish our zero carbon goals as a state, as the Governor's Climate Change Council has put forward. Yeah, the big actions in large grid scale solar and offshore wind, but everybody needs to contribute, and many of us can't put solar on our homes. There's so many places in the state where we can do a collaborative project whereby it's farming in solar, it's beekeeping in solar, it's brownfield and solar, that would allow us all to share in the benefits and to really make some significant progress in reaching those goals. So I'm disappointed where we are. It's a big opportunity area.
I just want to agree with you very much on that, and also take it one step further, that there's been a lot of talk about helping low and moderate income communities, but that's exactly the place where shared solar could make a huge difference in reaching communities that don't have access. You look at most of the major cities, which are where most of the low income people live, there's almost nothing happening for those communities in being able to access clean energy. And they're the communities that need clean energy more than any other. And also the way the rulemaking is structured, homeowners cannot even really build the kind of systems that could do everything. Like if I wanted to do on my house, get rid of oil heating and go over to really all solar electric to provide my energy and my heat, I can't even do it because the rules are structured so that I can only build a system that is based on what my average usage already is and not what it should be.
Well, I've had solar for 7 years, and we just converted to heat pumps. So we're all electric, got rid of our oil tank and our boiler. So I'm studying my bill every month to understand, having gone from a net generator to a net user, exactly those points you bring up. And I think you're absolutely correct. We could, without creating much risk, loosen some of those restrictions so that we can encourage more people to do so. I will say the downside is, now I've got a generator and some propane tanks, which I don't use very often, but in Connecticut, probably more than most places. We still have some very fundamental issues about the use of fossil fuels. having a grid which is interactive, two-way, and will allow for islanding where appropriate. And then, of course, the other major big issue is effective storage and how do we get there? Still the big opportunity.
Hi, this is Gene DeJoannis from Manchester. Regarding community solar, I would like to see the Green Bank change their financing model so that when they underwrite or provide an incentive for a solar installation, they utilize every square foot of roof that's available. And they take ownership of the excess capacity that the owner doesn't really want. And they sell that capacity to me, for instance, other users who can't do solar on their roof. It seems like a wasted resource. And they always limit their financing to what you're using now, right, instead of what is available. It would be a kind of a virtual community solar. We'd have this bank of excess capacity that would be owned by the Green Bank and leased to others.
I wish that I thought the state was going in the direction you described. I don't think it is. Yeah. I think that we are pretty much abandoning a more collaborative framework in favor of a market-driven approach. And even though the cost of solar has come down significantly and will continue to do so, I believe it's a public good that should be, if not subsidized, emphasized in a much stronger fashion. We have to find ways to encourage it. And what you described is one of many things we should be doing and at least discussing right now. And frankly, we're not.
There's another issue. I'm looking forward to the medium and heavy duty electric vehicle docket that PURA is supposed to be issuing shortly or this coming year, because that affects electric school buses heavily. Electric school buses are very expensive for the operators to purchase, and they need an additional revenue stream, and vehicle to grid could be that stream. But we need a PURA docket here in Connecticut that will enable that. And
I think it is actually part of at least one of the dockets. And I know that DEEP has purchased a couple of electric buses. The idea of converting a number of our fleets to do so, you have to have the infrastructure for recharging. You're right, they're very expensive, but the costs are coming down as purchasing volume is going up. I think that there's still a huge opportunity in terms of state fleets and corporate fleets to convert a lot. It's a more interesting challenge on the high torque vehicles, trucks and buses in terms of their ability to haul the load. In some cases, hydrogen fuel cells may be a better solution, but we should be looking at that as well.
But we need 2,434 electric school buses to meet our goal by 2030 of 30% electrification. So how are we going to meet that goal of 2,434 electric school buses? We have one in Middletown, so we actually need 2,433.
So
we're on the path.
I'd like to chime in here. Kathleen Shoemaker from Town of Hamden, and I'll just back up Daphne for a minute. Live Green Connecticut is delivering a get into the weeds and learn about electrification of transportation in Connecticut. And I commend that program to the attention of everyone here. Daphne, I'll leave you to the outreach on that. But I want to go back to the support Chief Gillette with input. Input doesn't just happen. In Hamden, where we have this problematic proposal for solar installation by a third-party installer on a steep forested slope, we've had success in responding to the Siting Council, securing that we're going to have a public hearing. We've gotten the Regional Water Authority, they've gotten standing as a party who can comment or whatever that's called. But that input did not just happen. There was a couple of organizations and a resident, and we orchestrated that input so that the Siting Council was hearing from people coming from a lot of different perspectives. And so as we think about giving feedback to PURA, we really have to understand that that takes championing and organizing that and really aggressively soliciting people to solicit feedback in a timely manner. And I agree that I think Chair Gillette is very open, and she was asking us to put things in front of Pura so that they have a basis for decisions that we want them to make. I know I can't champion all the feedback all the time, but I'm hoping there are people here with some bandwidth who might be willing to, orchestrate this group of people, and each of us can reach out to additional people in our communities, but we have to be serious about the process of providing feedback. So thank you. That's what I wanted to add.
I could jump in quickly and just say two people have, Chuck, you've got your hand up, and Iris, you've got your hand up, and time is running out. So maybe we can get your comments on the table before we go forward. Thank you, Kathleen.
Iris, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, so really quickly, I'm sorry, I have a.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me okay?
You're good.
Yep, and see you.
So I've been a public observer following the water plan for over 2 years now, and I'm sitting on their drought committee that we're supposed to give our recommendations to the state how to not get into dire drought and severe water problems. But I wanted to mention that the water plan is offering a committee, a workshop on pricing for water. And I guess my question here is to ask how we could do progressive water rates. And because I think the carbon fee is far out of reach. So I'm thinking of water rates and energy rates that will be more progressive, because I am not necessarily in favor of having affordable rates for energy for people to have mansions and just use more energy. That doesn't make sense. So I'm just throwing that out, that I'm interested to hear how we could, if we cannot have a carbon fee because it is complicated and dependent on legislator, is there anything we could do through the rates that will be more progressive and help people with low income? And just a general comment that I have, I really think that the energy deep and pure are underfunded. And yeah, so I just want to throw that out, that I really think that we were expecting for magic to happen without having funds, and we see how much money went into COVID. So, that's my comment.
Chuck, then Henry.
Yep. First of all, thank you everyone involved for putting on such an outstanding session. I was hoping to ask Representative Steinberg how he thinks votes can be moved in the legislature to bring us, in the direction we want to go on these issues. I've got a couple other people I know in the state Senate and what all, and it's just, how do we get people to realize where they should be voting and what are they looking at in order to make that decision? Is it just money to the state, or money, coming in for whatever purposes? Is it about resiliency or social equity? How are we going to make the persuasive argument, and what should we be bringing to the table, both as citizens and as regulators, et cetera, in order to move the needle and to move the votes?
Chuck, that's a great question. It's one I've thought about myself a lot over the last 10 years. Is when people see me coming, they run away in the other direction because they know I want to talk energy policy.
I won't.
It's a real challenge. As I said, the Energy and Technology Committee has perhaps the most challenging, abstruse policy issues to deal with, heavily lobbied. And you have people who are really on the committee who are dedicated against really making a lot of progress. It makes it very hard. I think a lot of them are focused on decreasing rates to the exclusion of any other part of the conversation, which just goes to show how challenging our conversation needs to be with them to educate them, to make them see that it's not about rates, it's about value, it's about the future. So what I try to do with people who may not see things as I do is focus on things that resonate with them. Oftentimes it's about jobs and the economy. We should be focusing on how we grow our economy. Green jobs are good paying jobs. They should be reliable jobs. They should be growth in the future. And we have a lot of opportunity right here in the state. Yeah, we haven't done a great job, frankly, with our own hydrogen fuel cell industry. And that's a warning that you have to be careful about supporting your own homegrown industries. But if you talk about jobs, if you talk about building the economy, if you talk about ways in which consumers are going to benefit, now legislators are responding in a way because they're thinking about their constituents. But what's implicit in that entire conversation is you got to give them a foundation of education so you can have that kind of intelligent conversation. And that's been a challenge for me, frankly. Oftentimes they see me as a radical who's only interested in big changes. And frankly, that's all true. But what we really need to do is make it accessible in a way. And, you know, if you want to be successful in the legislature, virtually all the time, it's an incremental approach. You know, sometimes the half the loaf isn't worth it, but oftentimes it's making progress along a path. Yeah, that involves studies and pilots and all sorts of things. But if you stick with it and you care about it and it's important enough, maybe eventually you get there. So I don't know if that totally answers your question, but I think at bottom line, I'd sum it up with an education campaign that never ends.
Yeah, count me in to help with that.
Great.
I think it goes back to Kathleen Showmaker's comment that input doesn't just happen. I think we got to keep doing it. And when we have somebody like Chair Gillette who will take it and shape it and use it, that's an invitation we can't turn down.
Thank you.
Was Henry still on?
Yep. Hi, Representative Steinberg. Thanks very much for your comments and for being here today. I wanted to follow up on the shared solar comments from earlier. We passed a bill to vastly expand the capacity for implementing shared solar and shared clean energy facilities. And I was wondering if you could just give us a status report on where that stands. Have any facilities been implemented and where?
You know, I'm embarrassed to say I'm not on top of this. It's kind of receded in terms of a topic of conversation at the legislative level. You know, here I am claiming to be the godfather of shared solar, and I'm not on top of everything. I should be. I promise you I'll do some investigating. I will say that I'm prepared to be underwhelmed, that I don't think that we're really focusing on it to a degree that we could. I think we've thrown some obstacles in the path of those who would like to put together larger scale projects. You know, we're still frustrating municipalities that want to do virtual net metering projects. For all of the progress, the momentum we created after the landmark legislation in 2011, we've really kind of slowed down, and we don't have the impetus that we did just a couple of years ago. I think we need to refocus our priorities on things like shared solar because they are, in the aggregate, going to be a significant part of the solution in reaching our clean energy goals. I need to look into it. I imagine that we have some projects in the works, but probably far fewer than any of us would care to think is really all we could do.
I'm aware of one. That's not to say there aren't not others. And that one would be in Bloomfield, Connecticut. It's right in back of the Bloomfield Public Schools. It's a 2 megawatt facility, and it was built by CTEC Solar under the pilot program. That's the entire extent of my knowledge. I put a link in the chat. I think it's sort of under the auspices of something called open skies or open roof or something like that. Well, this is pretty amazing. I just got confirmation that that is indeed the only project that has been completed. So you're underwhelmed. Prediction has come true. Okay. Well, thank you all. Mark or Patrice, or Daphne, any closing comments from your standpoint? And don't.
This was just so valuable. Thank you so much for spearheading this. And I think we're all just so inspired to take action now. So it's amazing. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. Thank you, CT Energy Network. Thank you, Daphne. Thank you, Clean Water Action.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend.